Good evening from Nairobi, Kenya. My name is Shon Osimbo, and welcome to the Athens Women's Football Series. This is where we have conversations about women's football and its growth across the globe. And today we are going to have a topic that is very close to my heart, and this is the growth of women's football in Africa. And before I introduce the lovely two ladies who are on your screen, let's quickly just talk about the main summit. This Athens Women's Football Series is a countdown to the main summit, which will be held in Athens, Greece, the 22nd and 23rd of this month. So it's just less than 15 days to this amazing event. So if you want to grab your tickets, you can scan the code on your screen right now. We have a discount code that is Athens WFS 10. Just scan that and you'll have all the details you want on how you can join us both physically and also online. So let's now get to the topic of the day, which is the growth of women's football in Africa. I'm in Nairobi, Kenya, as I said, so this is very close to home. And today we are talking to two wonderful ladies who are forces to reckon with in the football world, especially in the African football space. So it is an honor to welcome Meskerem Tadesse Goshime, who is the Senior Manager of Men's Football Development, CAF, that is the continent soccer governing body, and also Lindi Ngwenya, who joins us from the UK and also doubles up as a football agent and is very, very well invested here on the continent. So quickly, ladies, let's get into it. Welcome to the show. Meskerem, let's start with you. Kindly introduce yourself to our audience and expound more on your role at CAF.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Good evening from the lovely Cairo. So I am the Senior Manager of Women's Football Development. I'm originally from Ethiopia, but I'm based in Cairo. My love for football started when I was a kid, from my dad taking me to watch football matches locally and also the international match, the African Cup of Nations. I think I fell in love with football in the first African Cup of Nations that I saw with the South African Cup of Nations. That was hosted in South Africa in '96, and because I am a lover of Madiba Mandela, and I follow that. That is the first time I was introduced to football, watching the South African team and the South African AFCON. On that, I grow to love football. I grow to play it. I play for my university team. I didn't make it internationally. Then I transit into coaching because I studied sports science, and I transit into coaching. I coached in the league and in the university. I actually coached in the university I was a student at. After that, I did my master's in sports management because I really wanted to make football more visible for women, and the best thing to do is to break through and go to management and actually do what needed to be done. So I did my master's in sports management, and I was privileged enough to serve as the first deputy general secretary, women general secretary in my country. I was the first to be hired when the women's football department was established in the Ethiopian Football Association, also at CAF. At CAF, our role is to develop and grow women's football, and make it attractive to the girls of the continent, and create a career pathway so that every woman who wants to play football have a chance to play football, and every woman who wants to administrate or play any role in football have the successful role to do so. That's my role.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And I can't wait to go deep into everything that's happening on the continent. Over to you, Lindi. Talk to us about Lindi Ngwenya.
Thank you, Shon. Thank you, everyone. My name's Lindi Ngwenya, and I'm Managing Director of Sisu Sports Management, based in the United Kingdom, London specifically. And we also have an African flag subsidiary based in Nigeria called Sisu Africa. I am the founder of the agency. I started it back in 2013. And from the outset, the aim was always to provide a platform for underserved and untapped talents effectively to the global football stage. So from the beginning, we were involved in women's football. We've also been involved in football across the African continent, particularly in the Anglophone countries. And one of our sort of initial go-to markets, and there's one that has grown subsequently, was Sweden. And we've developed that into essentially being kind of our main market for a lot of our talent pool, as well as the broader Scandinavian region, Norway, Finland, etc. Yeah, in terms of, what we do, we're heavily involved in the women's space. And as the game has really started to pick up momentum and grow and see more investment, as a business, our focus is on helping to support that growth, providing pathways for the talent, for the players, also advising and helping kind of brands or any kind of organizations who want to get more involved in women's football. We can use the experience we've gained personally as a company, as well as with our network of experienced advisors, to really help to kind of steer them the right way so they can support the growth of the women's game. In terms of my own personal story, so very similar. I basically are from a Zimbabwean family, but I was born and brought up in the UK. Football mad family. My elder brother, 10 years older, he's I'm sure he'll forgive me for saying, was a failed footballer. He had a couple of trials with pro clubs, but never quite really broke through. But growing up, football was what really kind of was the fabric that surrounded the family, what we watched and what we were passionate about. I'm a Spurs fan for my sins, so I haven't really seen an awful lot of trophies in my time, which is probably a reason why I'm also a little bit of a supporter of the underdog. And so when I basically then sort of moved on to university, I actually ended up playing rugby, and I went on to play club rugby for about 10, 15 years. And that's the reason why, whilst rugby is a sport I've played a lot and I've still got a lot of affection for and a lot of connections, ultimately my first passion, my first love has always been what I've come to, which is why I established Sisu, and we've really focused on the football space as of now. I'm really excited to talk about the growth of women's football. I think that Africa is the next big frontier in terms of the emergence of talent and the development of the sport, and we want to be a part of that.
Yeah, and when we talk about women's football, I got a chance. I was humbled to be a media officer during the first, CAF Champions League CECAFA qualifiers here in Nairobi, Kenya, and I got to also understand how amazing, and talent we have just as East Africa and also as a continent in general. When we talk about, the likes of Loza Abera, she knows Loza Abera because, Meskerem, she's from your country. So that means the women's football is now flourishing across the world, and we are not being left behind as a continent. So what are your thoughts on this growth now that you're even part of CAF as we speak, Meskerem? And talk to us about how women's football has actually transformed on the continent.
Thank you for mentioning Loza. When I know Loza, she was 14 years old, and she I just remember her, a 14 years old girl, playing with under 17 teams, representing her region, and flying and running really fast. And that year we actually include her as a new talent to the national team. She wasn't playing, but she was just getting experience. So Loza, for me, when I see Loza, I see success in women's football, because I know her when she was just starting up. And where she came from actually is a very, very rural area where girls are not really taken seriously, and girls end up marrying young. So for me, Loza is a reflection of every success story of a women's footballer in Africa. It's not easy to be a woman footballer in Africa, but like my colleague Lindi said, it's growing and it's flourishing. When we see the numbers, 4 years ago, in the African Women qualifier for Ghana, we only have 27 teams registered to the qualifier phase. But moving forward for 2022, we have 44 teams that was registered to play in the qualifier stage, almost doubling the numbers, which shows you that there is interest and there is growth. More for us is the focus of our member association have been shifting. There is a lot of focus in introducing women programs inside member association. I believe from the CAF side, establishing the department as itself, because the department was established at the end of 2018, and there was a push. Just seeing that CAF has introduced a new department focusing on women's football development have pushed our member association also to focus on women's football development. And new talents are emerging and new programs are established. The Champions League that you mentioned, we were really surprised with the talent we saw, because that's where you actually see the real raw talent. And the 8 teams who had made it to the Champions League, and they did a really an amazing performance. We have seen that teams coming from small countries that we didn't expect beating and reaching the final or the quarter final of the Champions League. So there is a surprise in terms of talent that we saw, like in the African Cup of Nations, for example. We saw Burkina Faso, Senegal, and Togo. I will tell you, the first match, I was like holding my finger, because we pushed for the African Cup of Nations to be 12, and I was like, no more than 3 goals, no more than 3 goals. I was praying that we don't see that goal difference, but you see the competitive balance is getting really, really minimizing. That balance we see is becoming almost equal. We have a new champion. We have a new country reaching the final. So there is a really tremendous growth, but there is also so much to be done. We are not there yet.
Yeah, and still on the Loza Vera story, I think it's quite amazing that now we know and understand her journey, because also Lindi knows Loza. And you remember when I saw Loza, I was like, Lindi, you have to reach out to Loza, because she's quite the talent. When you see her, you see resilience, you see how far women are coming, are working hard on the continent, what they're doing exactly when it comes to football. And you, Lindi, you're working closely with some women players from Africa. Talk to us about some of the names under Sisu Sports Management and some of the projects you're involved in Africa when it comes to women's football.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like going back to Loza, she's, her achievements and what she's done make her an inspiration to a lot of girls and a lot of players across the continent. And I think, as more of those stories build, we will see more and more girls and more women get involved in the sport. So yeah, love Loza and watch this space, because I know that her next move is imminent. In terms of ourselves then, yeah, absolutely. So I guess we've got a number of players that we're kind of representing in our stable. Probably the most high profile ones in most recent times would be off the back of the inaugural CAF Champions League tournament that ran at the end of last year. So if you cast your mind back to that one, the final was played between Hesakis Ladies of Ghana and Mamelodi Sundowns. Sundowns subsequently won the match, but I will say that Hesakis won the war, in the sense that we were able to transfer 2 of the stars of that tournament. That was Evelyn Badu, who was the CAF Champions League. She was the MVP and she was the top scorer in last year's tournament. And also Perpetual Adjukum, who was the left back, and she was one of the sort of players in the best 11 of the tournament. We transferred both of those players to Norway, gave them the platform, obviously, to continue and further their football development. And really, I think it was testimony to, I think it already proved the fact that something like the Champions League tournament was something that was really, really important for the further kind of development of women's football. So on from that, we've got a number of players that we're working with. Some of the players at this stage, particularly the younger talents, it's more about mentoring and providing advice and really kind of steering them in terms of the right things to do, both from a personal point of view, nutrition, the way to conduct themselves, with the expectation that when they reach like the right age and they're ready, that they can go on and take the next step for them. We've recently taken on a few Nigerian under-20 internationals, and there will be a couple of moves announced over the next week or so in relation to a couple of those players who competed in the FIFA under-20 Women's World Cup that happened in Costa Rica a week or 2 ago. So there's lots of stuff going on in terms of the player representation side. On the coaches side, we have a number of coaches again that we like to work with to do more than just, like you say, to help them to kind of elevate their careers off the pitch as well as on the pitch. So one of our clients is Shalene Booson, South Sudan women's national team coach. She's a perfect example of someone who has gone into the, that country that, had the start of a program and has really gone in there and used her experience and expertise to help to develop the women's national team programs in that country. And away from that, she's also involved in a lot of initiatives and programs around uplifting the girl child, etc. So for us, it's really important that we contribute to, like, I guess I keep calling it the African sports ecosystem, because I feel that the sports ecosystem in Africa is quite fragile. It's nascent, certainly in comparison to some other parts of the world, particularly like the States and Europe. And we need to keep building those bricks and really develop the system. So a lot of our work now is looking at ways where we can use technology to start to kind of turbocharge, so to speak, all of these little elements that are coming together. And again, it's kind of hot off the press and still kind of getting close to the launch date, but we're working towards a technology platform that will provide a window, effectively, an aggregator for African talent that we can feed into all of the markets that are looking for student athletes. And that's something I've already kind of touched on briefly with Meski at CAF. And that's something that I think will be valuable for the whole continent, and in particular for the women's football players, where a dual career, I think, is doubly important. So when I talk about a dual career, it's the football along with education, or football along with vocational training, etc. Because fundamentally, the women's football players are not going to be getting the sort of earnings that the men have for many, many years. It's good that things are going up, but we have to create, I would say, a holistic kind of person. So I think football and education is a key tool for us with women's players. And that's why we want to also focus on the student athlete, which is maybe a little bit different to how our business kind of works in this position in Europe, where it's very much a pathway to professional clubs. Whereas in Africa, we're looking at a pathway to professional clubs and a pathway as well to educational establishments.
Yeah, and all these come down under, the initiative that have been set to help, the women's football when it comes to, the players across the continent. So back to Meskerem, talk to us about what initiatives have CAF, put out to promote, to push women's football across, Africa.
Thank you. As CAF, our role is creating the platform so that women can get. Are you listening to me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So for us, it's creating the platform so that, like I said, women can join into football. As CAF, it's our responsibility to develop women's football. And the first things we did was introduce our strategy, the Women's Football Development Strategy, and it's simple and specific, and we believe that this strategy can lay down the base for women's football development. If you see our strategy, it focuses on 5 priorities. There is development, marketing, promotion, social impact. We prioritize the communication, and we prioritize the development of the game inside and outside of the pitch. Inside the pitch, which means we focus on developing the coaches, developing the players, giving them platform. The African Champions League is one of the platform, one of the project that we actually drive from one of our priority, which is competition. So we're developing competition so that the girl can come and showcase their talent and can be picked up by Lindi to go to Europe or to represent their national association in a big stage. For these girls, this is the first time for some of them they ever played outside of their continent, their country, and moving to outside of their continent. And then when we come to the girls' football development, now CAF has introduced a new program. which is a school, the African school program, which is focused on actually giving opportunity for schools to organize football. Here, when we say this school program, we are always pushing to make sure that each country who's participating in this school program also present women projects. It's not just for men, it's not just for boys. And if any member association engage in this school program and only puts men or boys, we're not accepting it. We are making sure that they also introduce this school football program for girls. And when you come to the marketing and promotion, you have seen that we have established our own platforms for women football. We have introduced the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram account. More than that, in those accounts, we try to tell the positive aspects of women's football. We are doing a lot of promotional videos, a lot of promotional shows. We produce the Game Changer. I don't know if you saw it. If you didn't see it, please go to Women's Football website and see it. It's a really marvelous short documentary that was done in the first Club Champions League of Africa, where we discussed with every woman who are part of that Champions League. So we are showcasing that a woman can play, can be a referee, but also can be the backbone of a competition. It just your role is not just minimized into playing or coaching or referring. You can be a media officer, you can be a match coordinator, you can be a TSG member, a technical expert. So we are pushing and moving women's football by showcasing that any girl can be part of the pathway, part of the movement. We're not stopping there. There are other projects coming in the future. And we are also focusing on, when you talk about coaching development, we are really focusing on coaching women as women, because you know that most trainings are focused on the men's body. And we women struggle, especially with the menstruational cycle, with the physiological change, and with the hormonal change we go through every month. So with COVID restricting us, and through webinars, we conducted 3 consecutive webinars focusing on training athletes or training with female athletes. And we call all participants of all coaches of the women national team, coaches, physical trainers, to participate in this webinar, so that we are making sure that girls and our women players are coached by coaches who know that there is a different physiological need for our athletes. This is the things we're doing to promote women's football, and we are still working on new programs and introducing new initiation for our women football.
Yeah, and I love the fact, when you go through the strategy and all that, especially, pushing the men's side, at least, have a women's team. That is very important. Also, I saw through your LinkedIn page.
I forgot. Yes. I'm sorry, Shon, I forgot.
It's okay.
Actually, in the club licensing, this is going to be a real game changer for us. Mm-hmm. The new regulation of the club licensing, the African club licensing regulation, it states that from 2023, each team that's participating in the main Champions League need to have a women's team or need to be associated with a women's team. And this, I've been telling you, this will change the women's football for the better.
Yeah, and I fully support. I can't wait for Kenyan clubs. Personally, I can't wait for Kenyan clubs to actually do that, because I know how much it will mean to the women who love football in this country. Lindi, you just had your thoughts. That is a CAF strategy, which I know so many stakeholders are actually supporting, and they are happy about it. What are your thoughts on what Meskerem said?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I was going to mention the club licensing if Mesky had forgotten to, because from obviously an agency talent management point of view, this is a massive opportunity space for us that we see, because you're going to see the likes of Orlando Pirates, for instance, in South Africa, huge club brands across the continent, Ali, Zamalek in Egypt. Mm-hmm. These clubs need to form up women's teams, and there's going to be a big demand for the experience and the expertise around that, as well as the talent. There's going to be a whole infrastructure and, system they will have to build. And, these are big club brands, and, big club brands like anyone, these are like the alpha, the alphas, so to speak, of the club landscape. They want to get involved in these tournaments and get beaten and thrashed. So they're gonna put some proper investment into their women's teams. It's not just going to be a window dressing exercise, because at the end of the day, Zamalek, they can't be seen to get thrashed by an unknown, or to them unknown team from a smaller African nation. So this is going to be a big step change, I feel, for women's club football, and then the consequent kind of development and the extra investment into women's football across the continent. So yes, as Meski said, I think that club licensing requirement is going to have huge positive ramifications for the women's game.
Yeah, awesome. And one thing we have seen, the major investment that has been put in the CAF Women's Champions League and also the WAFCON, even the numbers, the digital numbers, we've seen them blow up, Meskerem. That is how much so many people are interested in the game. Tell us how especially these two competitions, have revolutionized the women's game on the continent.
Thank you. I think seeing a national team, always seeing your national team or a club playing in the continental stage is a big influence in terms of women's football growth. With the zonal competitions developing and moving forward, right now each zonal association is consecutively organizing a women football competitions, and we have seen that day by day, the number of participants are growing in the zonal union competitions. We thank our zonal unions for that. Right now, for example, COSAFA is organizing the COSAFA Women's Championship. It's live on TV. It's followed by millions of people across the COSAFA region. And a team like Mozambique, for example, they win against Angola, and it was a big thing. Posting in the internet, the National Association posting in the official Facebook. For this is a push forward for women's football. So participating, can you imagine a country participating in the African continental competition? A team like Togo, a team like Burkina Faso. Now, Burkina Faso is a big example for me because we saw them coming to the African Cup of Nations, and then there was a club actually participating in the qualifier stage of the WAFU Champions League. For me, just seeing a club from Burkina Faso reaching and qualifying for playing in the qualifier stage is a big thing, because we never hear Burkina Faso in women's football. Now they are going to become a familiar face, you see. So this is how we develop and we move forward. For CAF to introduce the Champions League, we have to go and analyze how many countries actually have a league before we move forward. And we find out only 38 countries have a league at that time. So now what we're trying to do is trying to strengthen the Champions League by introducing a prize money. Now the next edition will have a prize money. The first one, it was just a pilot, we didn't have a prize money. Now we will see a lot of investment happening in the club section, also with moving forward with the club licensing criteria. Plus to that, our women, we also have our own women football club licensing criteria. These clubs, when they come to the qualifier stage of the Women's Club Champions League, they're not going to be just coming saying we are a team. They need to meet a certain criteria. And this criteria is going to grow year by year. We are going to introduce more criteria every year, which also will push stakeholders to invest more in women's football. Also, the growth of the African Cup of Nations final tournament from 8 to 12, it has a tremendous impact, because now member associations have seen that the doors are open, they can come and play in the biggest stage, and it was a big push. And thanks to our host, Morocco, the organization was impeccable. It was a good organization. We have had, I think, one of the best, I can say, women's AFCON in Africa in 2022, and we have set the standard. So I hope for the next stage we will see more involvement and more a well-organized African Cup of Nations, and we hope to see more African nations engage in the qualifiers, not just the 44. Maybe next time we will be seeing 50 countries engaging in the qualifiers. That's what we hope.
Wonderful. And as much as you're celebrating these milestones and also, overcoming the stereotypes that come with women in football, you have to admit, Lindi, African women's football still struggles from a couple of things: the lack of infrastructure, on the ground, few women's competition compared to the male counterparts, less development at the grassroots level. How do you think Africa can overcome these challenges, Lindi? Let's start with you then. Same question to Meskerem.
Yeah, I think, Shon, though, some of the things that you just mentioned, the lack of infrastructure, are actually common across African football, really. If we actually look at the African game, regardless of a gender specific lens, infrastructure is oft cited as a big issue for African football in general. The lack of kind of stable, well kind of run, developed leagues is oft cited as an impediment for African football. The lack of maybe organized and structured youth level competitions and the talent development that brings is often cited as an issue with African football. So when you then look at women's football, and you're looking at, something that's, like nascent really in terms of how long it's, had time to kind of establish itself across the continent, then all of those problems are essentially going to be exacerbated to a certain extent because the investment levels are not the same as you would see in the men's game. The structures are much newer than what you were seeing in the men's game. So I feel like, the problems are, there's commonalities around some of the challenges, but the key is around the investment side, making sure that investment continues to go into the women's game, investment is encouraged into the women's game, and, touching again about the club licensing, encouraging and nudging the existing big club brands across the continent to really kind of commit to and get involved in women's football, because that will accelerate some of the growth and the improvement and the general kind of improvement across the board with women's football in the continent. So I always like to look at things with a more optimistic, forward-facing prism. There are challenges in the sport, and particularly for women's football, but these are challenges that we can deal with. They're well flagged up, and certainly I think we're in a moment. There's obviously the support from FIFA with, for instance, FIFA development money. There's lots of sources, I think, of additional pots of money where I think a judicious national association, judicious clubs that are well run and are progressive in their thinking can really start to access some of the funds for development.
And Meskerem, on your part, how can CAF and everyone, all the stakeholders involved, how can they help Africa overcome these challenges when it comes to women's football?
Yeah, as Lindi said, the lack of infrastructure is reflecting all across African football.
Mm-hmm.
However, CAF is moving forward with our stadium regulation, making sure that all stadiums are built based on the structure needed. Moreover, we are investing in the talent department, in the talent development with the African Football League. But as far as CAF and FIFA or the global governing bodies are concerned, it's the member associations that can make the difference. At the end of the day, the member association need to invest and need to make sure that women's football become priority or one of the priorities in their development, and make sure that they have a league. We always follow up with our counterpart of women's football administrators. For us, when one member association appoint a women's football development manager or competition manager, we try to get engaged and we try to empower them with the knowledge to get the best out of their stakeholders, because stakeholder management is one of the key component that our women football managers need to know, because you can create a lot of engagement with your stakeholders, with NGOs, to have the fund you need for women's football development. We try to guide them in the sense that they are empowered enough to know what their role is. But at the end of the day, the key is the member association. When the member association invests more in women's football, then they get the fruits of it. And women's football have been behind the scene for a long time. It's just now that we are coming in front. So it will take us a little bit more time, I believe so. But I cannot lie that we have really went a tremendous stride so far, and we will keep on growing, because there is no stopping women's football now. It's out of, let's say, it's out of from the kitchen, so it's now in front, as we are sitting in front. So I believe we're really moving forward with all the restriction we have.
Yeah, and Lindi, as just on the side, first of all, congratulations on your new partnership between Sisu Sports Management Limited and the International Professional Scouting Organization. Talk to us about that, and what should we expect to it, especially when it comes to women's football also in Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much. And that partnership, I'm really, really excited to see it go forward. The International IPSO, like we call it, it's a bit of a mouthful to call it by the full name, is essentially a body that's run by very, very experienced scouts with many decades of experience of scouting across the world. And they provide courses to train scouts, to give them the tools to understand that, again, scouting, it's not, there's lots of ad hoc or informal scouts out there. But again, the best scouts out there, effectively, they get training, they have, as well as the experience that they can build on that training. And IPSO provides that courses. They work with a number of federations as well in Europe, and they also work with the Indian Federation to train some of the scouts within the member associations there. So for us, as a company, we really wanted to find and be able to access a pool of scouts that could give us scouting reports and scouting intelligence on players in the women's football. And, it's actually quite hard to access those scouts. For a start, a lot of scouts at the moment want to still work in the men's game, or again, the ones who are keen to work in women's football perhaps don't necessarily have the training and the expertise to do it. So that's really what kind of formed the seeds of our kind of discussions, partnership discussions with IPSO. We needed to have a resource where we could utilize scouts who had the right sort of foundations in sort of training, who were interested in scouting in the women's football. And so ourselves and IPSO have come together to really, to kind of bring in that sort of pool of scouts, tap into their database of existing scouts to be able to then scout more players and hopefully find more talents, and we can then find more opportunity. But additionally, again, we want to encourage more women and more kind of allies of women's football to get involved in scouting. So to do the IPSO courses, to get out there and start going to matches, start reporting on matches, start doing player reports, and just get that women's football ecosystem up to a point where we can make it as efficient as possible to identify talent and then be able to develop it.
And I know this will be amazing now that we have, the initiatives, as Meskerem had talked about earlier, just being set in place. Actually, it's even easier, for the scouts to get to see the talent that is across this continent, because we all understand how good, we have very good players on the continent, but they have not been exposed for the longest time. But we feel, as Kaf said, it's time. The time is now. It's time. It's now our time. I've forgotten the hashtag.
It's time. It's now.
It's time. It's time. It's now. Yes. And I think this is the perfect time to actually have the conversation about women's football on the continent, to see where we can, correct, where we can improve, how we can promote all these clubs, players, and talk about it more. And the more we talk about it, the more we have a conversation, especially here at Athens, where we can't wait for the main summit in Athens. At Greece, that is the Athens Women's Football Summit, so that we can get deep into that. Ladies, I would have loved to continue with this conversation, but we have to release Meskerem as soon as possible. So quickly, before we wrap up, what next for women's football in Africa, Meskerem?
What's next is for me, I want to see our national teams participating in the World Cup, making it to the final. That's what I wanted to see. But also, we want to have a strong continental club competition moving forward, and also a youth competition, because continentally we don't have a youth competition for women as we speak. That would be the next. Maybe moving and increasing the number of the women's AFCON, why not? And generally having more women come into football, having presidents of member association, presidents of member association, executive committee members, more women in the executive committee members of our member association, and more women given a chance to lead member association or FS as a general secretary, as deputy general secretary. We have right now, we have 2 women who are serving as acting technical director of their member association, but we want to see also more women serving as technical directors, because we have tremendous women who have the quality to do so. So that's what we want to see.
Thank you. And Lindi, what about you? What next for Sisu Sports Management? As I know you've shifted your eyes to Africa, you've shifted your eyes to women's football on the continent. So what next?
Yeah, for us, for the women's football side of things, we are going to be a global agency. We've got obviously a stronghold, so to speak, across Europe, being based here in the UK, with the huge growth of football, particularly WSL over here in England. We are opening, or we soon will be establishing ourselves meaningfully in the South American region. And as you've already said, we've already kind of put a flag in the ground meaningfully in Africa. And that's what we're going to continue to commit to. One last thing I was going to say, and Meski touched upon it, we want to see the talents really kind of elevated to the global stage. As I said at the beginning, that's our vision as a company. That's what we want to do. And hopefully, and I'm beginning to believe that the penny's dropping for some of these member associations, etc., that the easiest, the most straightforward way to do it is going to be through the women's game. The gap between the top women's teams in the world and some of the African teams is nowhere near as large as trying to win the World Cup as a male African team. They've got to understand that with a consistent and significant but not huge investment, they can massively elevate the profile of their country, the national pride, and also provide opportunities for these talented girls and women. So hopefully the penny drops with more member associations invest in women's football. You will make your mark much more quickly that way.
Yep, I agree. It's as also a communication specialist, I truly agree. It's easier for the women to actually make a mark right now in the world of football. You can be in Africa and you're very big. We've seen with the likes of the players in Europe, even they're moving, it's a bit easier than their male counterparts. So I think it's very exciting for all the women on the continent. So thank you so much, ladies. So finally, before we wrap up, how can people reach out to you, if they want to, talk about women's football, invest in women's football, have them, people are getting to understand it's actually a process. So how can they get to reach out to you? Lindi, we can start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, Lindi Ngwenya, or Sisu Sports Management, or you can then go to our website, www.sisusportsmanagement.com, and connect with us directly. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone who wants to join us in our journey to grow the women's game.
Yes, Meskerem.
Well, you can reach out on LinkedIn. It's Meskerem Tadesse Goshime. Also, you can reach out and on my email, it's meskeremgoshime@cafonline.com. But also, please reach out on our platform, social platform. Go and follow CAF Women's Football on Twitter, Facebook, and also on Instagram. We are really active on Instagram. And if you reach out on Instagram, I will be able to see it. So please reach out on those platforms.
Thank you so much. I think my biggest takeaway, and it's very exciting for all of us, the three of us and the rest of the women on the continent, is that the new CAF club regulation states that a club participating in the CAF intercontinental competition must have a women's team or an affiliation/partnership with a women's club. This will be applied starting 2023. I can't wait to tweet that, and I can't wait to put that out so that these clubs across the continent know that, the women's game is serious business. We are not here to play. It's our time, and we are going to be the best at it. Thank you so much, Lindi, Ngwenya. Thank you so much, Meskerem, Tadesse, Goshime from CAF. All the best, ladies. Thank you for what you're doing for women's football across Africa. We at Athens Women's Football Summit, we wish you all the best as we continue with this discussion. It's the least we can do. We are doing it online now, but the main summit will be in Athens, Greece on the 22nd and the 23rd of this month, and we'll have official stakeholders, everyone talking about the women's game and how we can continue improving it across the world, and for me personally, across the continent, here at home, what I can bring back and talk to, the ladies down here in Kenya. Thank you so much for joining us. God bless you all. This was lovely. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.